This evening I would like to give you a biography of the embodiments of Phylos the Tibetan, which we know about because they are told in his book. The reason we study these lifetimes is the very same reason that he wrote his book. He wanted to teach us an understanding of karma and its cycles of return, and he wanted to show us that even though we have the grace of Jesus Christ that is for our salvation, the meaning of that grace is that it is not a wiping away of sin or karma, but it is an opportunity to be an embodiment to balance karma, and the grace is that we reincarnate, we can balance our debts to life, we can make mistakes, we can atone for them, we can walk the path of individual Christhood, and we can enter the resurrection and the ascension at the conclusion of this life. He makes the point that every jot and tittle of the law must be fulfilled, but he says it is by grace itself that the Son of God brings to us that we are able to have the opportunity to right every wrong and still survive. I have covered this in detail in my book, The Astrology of the Four Horsemen, in chapters 1 and chapter 37. It's important that you understand how grace and karma go hand in hand, and that karma does not exclude grace, and grace does not exclude karma. You will find that most Christians today do not understand this concept. They do not read out of the parables of Jesus or the writings of the apostles or the teachings of the entire scriptures that as a man soweth, that shall he also reap, and that we are bought with a price by Jesus so that we can fulfill that obligation. And it is only by God's grace that we may do so. So I'd like to give you a summary of the karmic challenges faced by the Ascended Master Phylos the Tibetan in some of his embodiments. As I said earlier, he made his ascension just 2 years ago, and so was working since the last century as an adept, an unascended adept at inner levels. So he is newly come into the order of the Ascended Masters and the fraternity of the Great White Brotherhood. The term Great White Brotherhood refers to the aura of the saints who have been purified and made white, and therefore they carry the white light, and that is the title of their brotherhood. The slide that is up is the artist's rendering of Phylos. His embodiments are revealed in the book A Dweller on Two Planets, or The Dividing of the Way, dictated by Phylos the Tibetan to his amanuensis Frederick S. Oliver. Amanuensis means secretary. It is not the category of a messenger, but simply someone who has the vessels necessary to write down what is given to him by an unascended or ascended adept. Phylos began dictating the book to Frederick Oliver in 1883 or 84, when Oliver was 17 or 18 years old. It was published in 1899. In his preface to A Dweller on Two Planets, Phylos calls himself a Theo-Christian student and occult adept. As I've told you, occult simply means that which is hidden, the mysteries hidden from the foundation of the world of which Paul spoke. So he's a student of the mysteries of God and of Christian mysticism. A Dweller on Two Planets is divided into 3 books. In Book 1, Phylos unveils the karmic record of his embodiment as Zalem Numinos on Atlantis. So this is a map of Atlantis as described by Phylos. Original drawings were made for the original publishing of the book, I believe, by Frederick Oliver himself. And so he is not quite as talented as the artists were who created subsequent editions of the book in the 20th century. So they tried to perfect what he did. So this particular drawing is actually as I believe the amanuensis saw him. And I think you can get the feeling of Phylos from this, even though it is not as worthy a rendering as the one done later, which was taken from it. I think you can meditate on the soul and the being of Phylos through this, and then see how the next artist who came along adapted it. There's something a bit lost in this one, although it's very good. It's very well done. A character in the book explains that Phylos does not reside in Tibet, but is called the Tibetan because he lives for a time on the soul plane of the occult adepts of Tibet. Atlantis, also called Poseid, is the lost continent that disappeared beneath the Atlantic Ocean in the flood of Noah. Archaeologist James Churchward estimates that Atlantis sank in cataclysm about 11,600 years ago. I think it's more like 11,900 years ago. Book 2 covers Phylos' embodiment in the 19th century as an American gold miner by the name of Walter Pearson. In this embodiment, he comes face to face with the karma he made on Atlantis. He is initiated into the inner mysteries and is given a vision of his past and his future. Book 3 reviews some of Phylos' past lives prior to his Atlantean embodiment as Zalem and explains why Atlantis fell. Phylos says that he wrote a dweller on 2 planets in the hope that others would learn from his mistakes. And those others are you and me, and all of us who have returned from Atlantis to be an embodiment as Americans today. So Phylos writes, he says, I have sought to explain the great mystery of life, illustrating it with part of my own life history, extracts which cover years, reaching into many thousands. Speaking of the suffering he had to endure as a result of his errors, he says, no words can paint the suffering of the expiation. I scarcely propose to try, and shall rest content if a realization of some part of it shall deter others from sin. At the opening of the book 1, we are introduced to Zalem Numinos at the age of 16. He is making a dangerous trek to the summit of the highest mountain on Atlantis called Pitak Rock. He has undertaken this pilgrimage to implore Inkle, the one true god of the Atlanteans, to help him achieve his goals. Zalem is a poor and fatherless mountaineer, but he aspires to greatness. As he nears the apex of the mountain, he asks himself, why not? Why not strive to become one amongst the foremost in my proud country? Am I not an Atlan, a Poseida, and is not that name synonymous with freedom, honor, and power? Is not this my native land, the most glorious beneath the sun, beneath Inkle? Poseid is queen of the sea, yea, and of the world also. Since all nations pay tribute of praise and commerce to us, all emulate us. To rule in Poseid, then, is not that virtually to rule over all the earth? Therefore will I strive to grasp the prize, and I will do it too. Phylos says of Zalem's character, if resolute effort could ensure success, I usually achieved whatever end I determined to attain. As he wends his way down the mountain, Zalem discovers a load of gold. This is the answer to his prayer. With the money he makes from the mining the gold, Zalem and his mother are able to leave their mountain home and move to Kaiful, the capital of Atlantis. There he enrolls in the College of Science, finds favor with the emperor, and works his way up into the higher echelons of Atlantean society. This shows pleasure boats in a waterway in Kaiful. One Sunday evening during his college days, Zalem encounters a stately old man by a moonlit fountain. The stranger gives him a prophecy of his future. He warns Zalem, thou hast a laudable will to excel and to attain high honors among men. Thou shalt succeed and shalt come into places of high honor and profit, and continue well thought of by all thy fellow men. Yet thou shalt not live the full term allotted to man on earth. In thy shorter period shall come to thee a knowledge of love. Thou shalt experience the purest affection man is capable of feeling for woman. Yet notwithstanding this, thy love shall not be a love crowned in this life period. And thou shalt love again, wherefore thou shalt weep because of it. Thou shalt work some good in the world, but alas, much evil also. And because of an overshadowing destiny unto thee shall come much sorrow. By thee unto another shall deep misery of anguish come, and unto the uttermost shalt thou pay therefore. Yet behold, not in this life shall much be required of thee. When thou thinkest least to do sin, then shall thy foot stumble, and thou shalt commit a sin which shall be unto thee a pursuing fate inexorable. Lo, I say unto thee, thou shalt perish in a cavern. Me, even me, shalt thou behold as the last living being upon whom thy poside eyes shall ever rest. But I shall not seem then as now, and thou wilt not know me for the one who shall smite the evildoer, and who will then have enticed thee to thy doom. May peace be with you. With these words, the mysterious stranger disappears. This is the warning of the karma that will descend in the life of Zalem as the result of previous incarnations, as well as that which he makes in that life. The warning is given so that he can act in time by free will to change the future and to follow a deeply spiritual path, that he might not fall into the pits of his descending karma. He does not do so, but he follows the way of the world and ambition, and therefore does not have his spiritual moorings deep enough to save him in his time of testing, major soul testing. After Zalem has been in Kaifu for 4 years, the emperor's chief advisor, Prince Menax, adopts him as his son. After the adoption ceremony, Zalem expects his mother to come and live in the prince's palace with him. Zalem tenderly loves his mother and is joyous that she will be able to share in his good fortune. She, however, has no desire to do so. She reveals to her son that she detested his father, and although she took good care of Zalem when he was growing up, she doesn't really love him either. He is an object of indifference to her. She tells Zalem that she married her old lover that morning and plans to live with him in the mountains. This confession so shocks Zalem that he falls unconscious on the floor and for 2 weeks is near death with what he calls brain fever. He awakes in the palace of Prince Menax and is nursed back to health. Because his mother is such a painful subject to Zalem, from that time on, she is never again referred to by anyone. This is a turning point in Zalem's life and psychology. Having read this book, I realized that his psychology, influenced by his past incarnations and karma, has a great deal to do with how he deals with adversity and challenges and what propels his ambition. So I decided to do a lecture on the psychology of Zalem. And this turned out to be a 5-hour lecture at Summit University, given in 2 parts, so that you could understand the intricacies and the interweavings of karma, reincarnation, and psychology. The psychology we bring with us today is not merely the effects of our environment or our hereditary in this life. We have a cumulative psychology that goes back for thousands of years. It is complex, and the beginning of resolution is the spiritual path, is a path of discipleship that is toward individual Christhood in the footsteps of Jesus Christ and Gautama Buddha. But it is also the invocation of the violet flame and the giving of mantras. One of the great turning points I have experienced in my path, and I've had many great turning points, was when I produced the album with our congregation of devotees in Montana, the album of the mantras of Kuan Yin and the rosaries of Mother Mary. We learned to recite these in Chinese. We recorded them with gongs and sounds of the East and a step up of the notes, the keys, giving each one about 33 times. Kuan Yin out of the East is an ancient goddess, but she is more than that. She is an ascended master, an ascended lady master of high attainment on the Buddhic path. And her great outstanding quality is the quality of mercy. We pray to the merciful heart of Kuan Yin. And what I found as I gave these mantras over and over again and learned to, I won't say master them, but to say them in Chinese as best I could, and to put them together with the rosaries of Mother Mary and a balance of the Divine Mother East and West, is that my heart became the heart of Kuan Yin. It became a fountain of mercy. It could not escape me. This is an artist's rendering of her, and I know you've seen many statues of her. And so I found that the beginning and the ending of the path is mercy. To be able to extend mercy, which is a quality of the violet flame, in such intensity that the love of that mercy simply runs to greet friend or foe alike and to transmute all discord, all non-resolution, all sense of frustration or revenge or hatred or anger or fear concerning what any part of life has ever done to oneself or any other part of life. I was literally drenched in mercy's flame, and my heart had a new capacity to hold the flame of the Christ and the Buddha. This has never left me, and I would like to recommend that album to you because Jesus began his mission with forgiving the water and turning it into wine, because the water of our human consciousness is not adequate to receive the Christ, only the wine of the Spirit. These mantras are gentle. They carry the vibration of the Divine Mother, and Gautama Buddha spoke today especially of the Divine Mother, and our rapprochement with her, our making peace with our Divine Mother, as well as human mothers in this and previous lives. I believe that divine resolution, as well as the human resolution, is so fundamental that if I were going to recommend one thing to you this evening, it's to take home that album and let it sing in your heart and know the great, great mercy of Kuan Yin. I don't think any of us can be truly joyous in life while we feel that there is some edge, some sharp edge between us and some other part of life. There's one thing that you can't do in life. Mark Prophet used to say this. You can't make people love you. They're going to like you or they're not going to like you. But one thing you can do is you can love them. And you can love them with great intensity. And you can do the best you can, but you cannot change people's free will. And so this love becomes a fountain of great healing. It opens your path to be the bodhisattva, to give your life, to stand between humanity and their suffering. It makes you selfless with less self-concern, because when you have mercy and forgiveness, when you have love in your heart, you have everything. You don't need anything else of this world or any world. You simply exist to be that love, and you have a heightened perception of just how much people need that and what a great gift you have to give. To withhold forgiveness is to cause the atrophy of the chakra of the heart and the flame of the heart. It is to cause hardness of heart until the heart can become as a stone. And of course, this is unchristlike. It is antichrist. I bid you to the beginning of the path, which is forgiving and forgiving again. It does not mean that we absolve people of sin or karma, because that's not our province. It is ours to forgive. It is God's to mete out justice, as it is written in the Old Testament, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." The law of karma is inexorable, and therefore we need not be concerned. God takes care of everyone. What we must know, it is our office to forgive. So that is my testimony to you of the marvelous presence of the Mother and of mercy's flame. So that is essential to resolving our psychology. Psychology is schism, division in the subconscious and the unconscious, from unresolved situations that go back so far that we couldn't possibly deal with them in a lifetime. That's why Saint Germain has given us the violet flame and why we use the mantras. So this analysis of Zelem's psychology is on video and audio tape. It's at our publication table tonight, and I think that it will help you come to grips with your psychology and the karmic forces that influence your progress on the path. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed giving it, and as much as everyone who has heard it has been helped by it. So getting back to the story, while Zelem is still in college, the emperor sends him on a diplomatic mission to the land of Swern, which encompassed present-day India and parts of Arabia. When the Swerni emperor unexpectedly dies, Zelem is appointed to rule over the 85 million people of that land. He establishes schools and does much to teach the people to be self-sufficient. Meanwhile, in his private life, Zelem falls in love with a daughter of Prince Menax, whose name is Anzame. This slide shows Anzame in the gardens of one of the royal palaces. They have a deep love for one another, and in Book 2, Phylos reveals that Anzame is his twin soul, or as we would say, twin flame. Another woman in Zelem's life is Lolix, beautiful but heartless. She is the daughter of the head of the Chaldean armies. Lolix has been exiled to Atlantis after the Chaldeans had been defeated by the Suernes. This slide shows Lolix recounting the story of the Chaldean defeat to the courtiers in the palace of Prince Menex. She is attracted to Zelem because he is strong, courageous, and handsome. As it is the custom of her people for the women to woo the men, Lolix courts Zelem. Zelem is flattered but intends to marry Anzame. Attempting to dissuade Lolix, he lies, telling her that Atlantean law forbids marriage to those of alien birth on penalty of death. Lolix is unmoved by this and says, if the law forbid, it is all the same. None but ourselves need know. With this, Zelem succumbs. They carry on a secret love affair concurrently with Zelem's wooing of Anzame. Now this is no ordinary betrayal. It's the betrayal of one's own spiritual partner, twin flame, the other half of the whole. In telling the story of his duplicity, Phylos writes, did I think of Pitak Rock and my days of sinlessness, or of the mysterious stranger whom I had heard in awe in the first of my life at Kaifu? Yea, I thought of these things. I thought of Inkle, and I said, Inkle, my God, if I am about to do wrong in thy sight, in disregarding the laws of society and marriage, smite me dead ere I sin. But Inkle smote not then, but afterwards through the ages. This is a defiant statement, and I have heard people say that in my presence, much to my shock in this life. Let God strike me dead if I have done wrong or if I have done evil. God does not respond to the proud or to the fallen angel who has this defiance. God does not simply let our sins come tumbling down upon us when we decree it, because we are under the law of cycles, and light that is qualified with darkness goes forth from us. It goes around in the circle, around the earth, and it returns again. And it comes according to the law of cycles, and that is why it can be clocked by the handwriting in the sky, astrology itself. And this is the mystery that I explain in the astrology of the Four Horsemen. A very important understanding how we can read the signs in the skies and determine what karma we will be dealing with on a daily basis, and then determine to overcome it. He smote not then, conscience slept the sounder, but passion awoke. It's important to note that God doesn't stop us from making karma. I think we've all had the experience in life of feeling that something we were doing was very wrong, but nevertheless continuing to do it, and expecting that any moment we would be stopped, or an angel would come along, or somehow we would get out of this mess. And yet life went on as we had to deal with the weavings of the human consciousness. That is part and parcel of the gift of free will. We come into embodiment, we exercise free will, and when we decide to go astray from the laws of God, we will learn the consequences by and by. So after some time, Lolix becomes pregnant. She gives birth to her child, but to avoid a public scandal, Zelem and Lolix place the child in a home. Lolix becomes pregnant a second time, but in order not to jeopardize Zelem's position, she has an abortion unknown to her lover. Eventually, Zelem asks Anzame to marry him, and she accepts. Lolix hears the news from Anzame herself, who is her friend, and is devastated. The next day, a heartbroken Lolix tells Zelem that she accepts his decision, but she still loves him. She says she will never expose their affair to the world and confesses that she aborted their second child. Because of Zalem's and Anzame's high social rank, their coming marriage is to be announced that night in a ceremony in the great temple before a large audience. This slide shows the ceremony. Mainin, the high priest of Atlantis, presides at the service. In the midst of his opening invocation to Inkle, Lolix disrupts the ceremony. She does not reveal her affair with Zalem, but states that she has wooed him and appeals to the emperor to deny the banns of marriage. The emperor refuses, and as the ceremony proceeds, Lolix, in a crazed state, takes out a dagger and aims for Zalem's breast. He deflects the blow and is stabbed in the arm. To the horror of everyone, the high priest Mainin uses his occult powers to turn Lolix into stone. Because a death occurred during the ceremony, Atlantean custom decrees that 1 year must elapse before Zalem and Anzame can be married. Overwhelmed by remorse and guilt for having caused the death of Lolix, Zalem becomes deeply depressed. He leaves Kaifu in an airship, or Velix. This slide shows a Velix, and wanders aimlessly for 3 months, even contemplating suicide. In an out-of-the-body experience, he sees Lolix praying beside his body for God to restore him. Suddenly, they are both transported to a sandy waste. Phylos describes the dramatic scene that follows. Before our horror-stricken gaze came a little babe, so tender in age it seemed just born. It was able to come to us, however, and it could utter wailing speech which smote our ears like cries of mortal agony. It was dripping with blood, and its eyes were those of a dead infant. With an awful shriek of anguish, Lolix cried, "O Inkle, my God, have I not suffered enough but that my dead, my murdered babe should come to smite my soul? Zalem, Zalem, see our baby girl, murdered by me for thy sake." My heart seemed to stop beating in its fearful woe as I stood paralyzed, gazing at the little one as it stretched its hands, gory with the blood of untimely birth, and raised its glazed eyes to me. Then I stooped and I took it in my arms, holding it close, trying to warm its poor, cold little body. And I wept, at last I wept great tears of real value, because shed for another. With a voice choked with anguish, I said, "Lolix, thy sin is on my head, because done for me. Let Inkle have mercy on me if he will." Then a glorious radiance broke over the scene, and the cross-bearer was beside us as we stood, clasping each other and our child. He whom I had seen by the moonlit fountain years before stood by us again. On his breast shone a cross of fire which leaped or fell again in waves of undulating living light. He spoke, "Lo, thou hast called upon the Most High for mercy, because unto that little child thou hast shown mercy, thou shalt receive it. He that causeth another to sin, causeth that other's hand and his own feet to slip and to turn from my way. He must atone, or make his heart one to me first. Then go again into the field of woe, yet not in a body of flesh but of spirit. And he must find his victims and struggle with them till he turn them back from whence he led them. Thus taketh he on his own back their burden he made them to place there. Then shall he carry it for them until they, following his spirit counsels to their souls, are come unto me, the Christ. And I will take that burden, that shadow, and it shall cease, for I am the Son of Truth." After this experience, Zalem returns to Kaifu. He learns that in his absence, Menax has died of grief, believing his son to have died. He seeks out Anzame and confesses everything to her. She forgives him, and they proceed with their wedding plans. To while away the several months still remaining before they can be married, Zalem leaves on a mining trip to a remote area of Umaur in present-day Peru. He takes a horse and rides out alone into the wilderness. Zalem discovers a cavern and explores an ancient dwelling that had been built inside it. Before leaving the dwelling, his curiosity impels him to swing the large stone door of the dwelling on its hinges. Misjudging its weight, he pushes too hard, loses his balance, and is knocked out when he strikes his head against the wall. When he comes to, he finds that the door has slammed shut and automatically locked itself. He is trapped inside. Zalem realizes there is no way out of his predicament. He kneels down to pray, but as he utters the name of Inkle, he is startled to hear a mocking laugh. Before him appears Mainen, the high priest of the temple in Kaifu. Being an adept, Mainen is able to project himself to another place while his physical body is in a tranced sleep. Mainen tells Zalem that he has come to help him, but it will take a while to dispatch an airship from Kaifu. He then disappears. The hours pass into days, and Zalem is tortured by hunger and thirst. A week elapses as he lays moaning and feebly calling to Inkle for help. Zalem hears the same laugh that heralded Mainen's first visit. Mainen appears before him once again, and this time divulges his true character and intent. When he spoke, his first words were in mockery of Zalem's appeals to the great Father of Life. Ha! Much good may it do thee to cry unto Inkle or any helper. God! There is no God. Bah! How blind men are to pray to such empty ideals as their fancies name God. Men of Poseid say Inkle is God, men of Suerne say Jehovah, and they of Necropan say Osiris. What madness and idiocy! Then Mainen reveals his diabolical plot to take revenge on Anzame, for whom he has an undying hatred. He says, "Is it news? Aye, it is news to thee that I should desire to achieve the ruin of her called Anzame, that I came from a former life on earth, aye, many of them, filled with hatred of her who always heretofore hath caused me to be exposed to the laws of man. But I will through thee wring her heart to the depths, so that she shall cry out in anguish of soul, What hath Anzame done to me? Not as Anzame, but as a powerful woman and seeress, ere she was born in the earth as Anzame. I follow her in vengeance. To wring her soul in agony I compassed the death of her father Menax, against whom personally I had no cause. I have almost done the same for thee, yet have I naught against thee. I it was that did work upon thy curiosity, that thou here mightest find thy death. Thy death will occasion, Anzame, much torture. For that purpose also was Lolix led to do as she did, and thou also with her, so long ago. For I lay my plans long ahead, being gifted with vast power of forepiercing the future. At the last, she who is the object of my chiefest wrath shall not know good from evil, so that her name shall be a scorn in the mouths of the people. Revenge is sweet, Zalem, sweet. Mainen also brags that he has deceived even the most advanced adepts and infiltrated the ranks of the Sons of the Solitude, an order of high initiates. Finally, the high priest says to Zalem, Bah, if God exists, I fear not, yet let him punish. That, of course, is again the challenge to Almighty God, which challenge is answered. At this, a human form surrounded by a blinding white light appears before them. It is the Christ. He rebukes Mainen and says, I will cut thee off for a season, for thou shalt neither destroy more of my sheep, nor be let to leave unexpiated the evil thou hast done. I cast thee into the outer darkness. Phylos writes, as the Son of Light ceased to speak, Mainen uttered a howl of mingled terror and defiance. At this dread sound, the Christ stretched forth his hand, and instantly Mainen was surrounded by a glowing flame, which, on disappearing, revealed also the disappearance of the demon priest. The Christ then prophesies to Zalem, Thou shalt lead my people, and lo, thou shalt lead them in a day to thee, yet afar off. But now thou shalt go no more to Attal to live there, neither be seen of Anzame any more, until she hath gone from earth twice and come again, and shall be called Phyros. Lo, I have said that these things should come to pass, and did prophesy unto thee in that city called Kaifu, and thou heardst me, yet heeded not. But now thou wilt heed me, for I speak great words of God, and the world is his. Peace I give unto thee, sleep. So ends the life of Zalem Numinos of Atlantis. Phylos relates his experiences of Zalem in Devachan following his death. Devachan is another name for the etheric octave. It has many levels and compartments where souls are assigned between embodiments. I will be teaching on Devachan in my lecture on dealing with death, discarnates, and malevolent spirits, Part 3, during my weekend seminar in Seattle, May 3 through 5, this coming weekend. This lecture will be on Friday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. There is a great deal to be told about Devachan. It'll be at the Seattle Hilton. So Phylos writes of his tragic life of Zalem, quote, "Karma lay in wait for the evil of my life, demanded payment, and got it, every jot. There is no vicarious expiation for evil done, and no escape from its penalty." Now that statement is true, and what Christian orthodoxy will tell you is that it was once true under the Old Testament dispensation, but since the coming of Jesus Christ, that has been all wiped away, and we are saved from all of our karma, from all sin, by making a confession of Jesus Christ, whereby He will pay the price. This doctrine is not true. It is a false doctrine that appeals to those of non-responsibility and non-accountability before God for their words, thoughts, feelings, and acts. Unfortunately, most of Christendom today is under this false belief, and therefore I have seen how many Christians can work ill against their neighbor, cannot take responsibility for human life, can stand by while abortions are committed or the Kurds are massacred, and somehow is inculcated in them that they will not have to pay the price for the consequences of their sins of omission or commission. It is for this reason and knowing this that Phylos was determined to write his book, to dictate it to his amanuensis, so this single false teaching that has changed the course of Western civilization can be overcome and the true teaching be placed in its proper perspective. As I began with this lecture, the concept of grace is the means whereby we are saved to fulfill our obligations to the law. Jesus bears our sins and bears our karma, but He does not wipe or cancel them out. He bears them until our souls are strengthened on the spiritual path, and when we are strengthened once again, and we are one with God and we are determined to pay the price, He gives them back to us and allows us to carry them, so that in the dignity of true sons and daughters of God, we can reunite with the living God, having paid the price. So now he talks about responses to his book. He says, readers of my book, Two Planets, may consider a while over those passages concerning the sin of the Princess Lolix and of Zalem. They may say that the mention of this fact, though liable to occur as one of the varied experiences of life, is nevertheless out of place in a book whose aim is highly moral. But I ask those who know my work, is it inexcusable to speak of those grave but common crimes if the author can treat them as examples of broken law and can place the working of such so clearly before the unthinking world that men and women will be afraid to break that law, fearful of the penalty, which can in no wise be evaded? I think it unjustifiable to keep silence under such circumstances. I have so far from overdrawing the estimate of the penalty of the crime, not given the entire expiatory picture. I know whereof I speak, for this is my own life history, and words have no power to depict the utter misery which the exaction of the punishment has caused me. Phylos wants us to know the reality of dealing with past karma, that there is suffering in dealing with it, but there is always the light at the end of the tunnel, because as we pay, as we go, as we stop going away from the sun, walking away from it, sowing bad karma, we decide to turn around and face the sun of our I Am Presence and pick up all of that karma we have left strewn along the highways of the universe as a burden to other parts of life. It is a wonderful feeling to pay your debts in life, to pay the price so that we can be free of the endless rounds of reincarnation and get on with serving in the kingdoms of God in many worlds. Phylos says, "If but one soul shall be saved like misery and similar or equal sin, or less or more error, then I am content." Phylos also tells us that the name Zalem means, "I live to love." I have been on the path in this life, all of my life, and specifically on the path of the Ascended Masters, diligently working as a Chela for over 30 years. And I want to tell you that the experience of receiving returning karma and understanding how painful is the process of working through it creates a great sense of caution within oneself, not to cross the line of the law, not for selfish reasons, because if that is not the reason is that if you make more karma, then you have less opportunity to serve others because you are enmeshed and embroiled in your own karma. And so once you balance it, as by the grace of God, Jesus has given me opportunity to do in this life, then you are open for a world service unimpeded by returning karma. I have seen how there is nothing like returning karma to teach one lessons of caution with the law itself, and to know it is unerring, it is irrevocable, and everything we send out turns around and chases after us. If we send love, love chases us too, and we get love back. And so karma balancing is an educational process like nothing else in the universe. It is a great teacher, it is a great disciplinarian, and when you determine to balance it, it is hard, but it is joyous. I have not known a sorrowful way, though I have known agony and pain beyond belief in this life. Yet in my heart was always a flame of joy and recognition that there is no injustice anywhere in the universe. And I believe that with all of my heart. And therefore what the universe delivers back to us is either our karma, or it can be the vulnerability of our psychology. For instance, if we go around condemning ourselves or feeling unworthy, then we will attract unworthiness and condemnation to ourselves. And so imperfect concepts of oneself are karma making in themselves. And we have to remember that we are sons and daughters of God. And because God is in us, we are worthy. And because God is in us, we are holy. And because God is in us, we are not worthy to be condemned. And so we have to stop it, because when we condemn ourselves, we are condemning God. So I am grateful for the lessons I have learned and for the wisdom that has accrued to me from so many varied experiences with so many, many, many people that I have met along the way of life. And so, Phylos says, Zalem was possessed of an overmastering ambition to make his name blaze among those of the noble of earth. He sees that ambition and pride were a part of his downfall. He succeeded in his ambition, for his name, his wealth, his social and political position became of the highest of the aristocracy of a proud and in myriad ways marvelous people. If he failed in one particular, if his moral life became awry, his record in other respects was most commendable. For the one failure he paid dearly, and if you credit his own apprehensions, the payment would not be complete for many a long, long year. In Book 2 of A Dweller on Two Planets, it's in the same volume, Phylos tells the story of his life as Walter Pearson, a 19th century American. He writes, "If the Poseida Zalem was proud to declare himself a Poseida, that is, Atlantean, I am equally proud to say, I am an American citizen." Phylos celebrates America as Atlantis come again, as we should also. We should see ourselves as Atlanteans come again. All of the inventors of this in the last century brought their inventions back from Atlantis. Again and again they have come, giving us the technology and the science that has brought America to the height of creative achievement in that field. Phylos says America should be peer and even more than Atlantis, but because she is Atlantis returned on a higher plane, she must endure the woes as well as retrace her pre-carnate glories. In other words, he is telling us that Americans today are reincarnated Atlanteans. We have inherited the glories as well as the karma of Atlantis, and we must work through both if we are to overcome. As a young child, Walter Pearson is orphaned. He becomes a cabin boy on a ship at the age of 12. By the age of 18, has risen to the position of first mate on a British ship. Before he is 21, he invents a seafaring device and becomes rich. After serving for 2 years in the Army of the Cumberland during the American Civil War, he forms a gold mining company in California and adds to his fortune. In California, Walter uses part of his fortune to help an 18-year-old girl named Lizzie, whom he prefers to call Elizabeth. Elizabeth was raised in a good home in the East, but was rejected by her family and society when she had an affair with a man. She is a talented artist, but is forced to lead the life of a prostitute. Walter learns of her plight and gives her a large sum of money to go away and start a new life. While he is working at his gold mine, Walter becomes friends with one of his employees, a Chinaman named Kuang. On more than one occasion when they are alone in the wilderness, Kuang displays the power to tame wild animals and is able to read Walter's mind. When Walter asks his friend if he knows occult laws, Kuang reveals that he does, and that he is a member of the Lothinian Brotherhood. He says that Walter is already well known by the members of this fraternity because of his deep desire to learn of the mysteries of God. Through a secret entrance in the granite wall of a canyon around Mount Shasta, Kuang leads Walter into a lodge of the Brotherhood. There he meets members of the fraternity. Here is Kuang showing him the opening. The Grand Master Mendokus of this particular Lothinian lodge is the reincarnated Rai Wallen, the Emperor of Atlantis at the time of Zalem's rise. This Grand Master gives Walter the opportunity to join the Brotherhood, but first warns him that his path will be arduous and painful. To thee, as to all other occult neophytes, will come moments of darkest doubt, and thy very soul will weep in the agony of despair. Woe unto thee if thou shalt faint while buffeting the billows of doubt. Set not thy hand to the plow if thou canst not go to the end of the furrow. It is long and difficult to follow. The reason that the path of initiation under the Ascended Masters is difficult to follow is because you are doing two things at once. You are balancing karma at the same time as you are gaining self-mastery and having to pass your tests of initiation. The arduous part of it is truly the karma. There is not one without the other. When Walter decides to accept the challenge, the Master says, "Though thou shalt come forth at last as gold burned in the fire, yet the ordeal confronting thee is fierce." A master by the name of Mo Lang then arrives at the lodge and takes Walter with him to his home on Hesper, the planet Venus. He explains that Venus is peopled with advanced occult souls. Walter travels to Venus in an astral form while his physical body remains on Earth. Mo Lang, we find out, is Ernin, Rai of the Swearnes, come again, reincarnated. And his son Soma is a son of the solitude, the one that was left after Ernin's death to rule the people. Mo Lang has a daughter, her name is Phylos, and that was the prophecy given by Jesus that she would be embodied again as Phylos, the twin flame, Anzame, the twin flame of Zalem. So they become Walter's mentors, Mo Lang's son and his daughter on Venus. They teach him occult truths and show him many marvelous inventions that are part of everyday life on Venus. This slide shows Phylos causing a tree to grow quickly. Phylos writes of his experience on Venus. No telescope will ever reveal human life on Venus, not that it is not there, but its forms are imperceptible to earthly eyes. Your eyes are very limited in their visual range. It is impossible to express adequately what perfection of physical life exists in Hesperus. It is a perfection of the physical nature amid ideal surroundings. Any Hesperian has an almost godlike beauty and grace. Toward the end of his visit, Phyros reveals to Walter that she was embodied on Atlantis as Anzame, and that she is his twin, that his spirit and her spirit are one. She instructs him that when he returns to Earth, he will forget his experiences on Venus. She says that the astral record of his experience will at times speak to him in a form resembling himself, but he will not recognize its words as his own history. Walter and Phyros part, and Walter returns to his body on Earth. For 2 years, Walter's restlessness impels him to travel all over the world. In Norway, he unexpectedly meets Elizabeth, who is now a professional artist and is vacationing there. Walter spends a peaceful month with her before leaving for St. Petersburg, Russia. A year later, on the streets of Washington, D.C., they meet again. Walter comes to realize that he loves Elizabeth. They get married and have 2 daughters. However, Elizabeth does not share his esoteric interests, and as time goes on, Walter begins to feel an ill-defined sorrow. One day, a ghost-like form resembling himself appears to Walter. It tells him of its experiences on Venus and becomes a regular visitor. Eventually, the ghost integrates with Walter, and he experiences its visions and perceptions as his own. Preoccupied with his memories of Venus, he is caught between 2 worlds. Life on Earth is unfulfilling, yet he cannot have the life on Venus he yearns for. He is disgusted with worldly interests and grows thin and pale. He even absent-mindedly calls Elizabeth Phyros. Realizing that his loving wife is burdened by his odd behavior, Walter resolves to subdue his sorrows and make his wife happy. Phylos writes, "I had found the true path at last. Service. I no longer wept for myself. My ears were no more sensitive. My tongue no longer wounded anyone with its morose utterances. I lived unselfishly, my whole being bent on doing my best." In 1878, Walter and Elizabeth's 2 daughters die of epidemic scarlatina. This is a terrible blow to them. Walter devotes himself to comforting Elizabeth, and she dedicates herself to doing good for others. These were the 2 children that they had on Atlantis, and this Elizabeth is Lolix. One they gave to a home for adoption, another was aborted, and so they did not have the opportunity to have them for their full maturity as part of the karma with them. One day he teaches Elizabeth about the law of karma. She has a psychic experience, remembers that she was embodied as Lolix, and recalls the circumstances of her death in that lifetime. You remember she was turned to stone by the high priest who was a black magician, Manan. Phylos says, this experience had a great effect on her, so that she looked more and more into the strange learning, and as a result redoubled her efforts to do good in the world. Feeling the need of a change for the sake of his health, Walter gets a job as mate on an American sailing vessel. Elizabeth refuses to be separated from him and goes along. As they sail near the Bermudas, a terrible storm comes up. The ship springs a leak and begins to sink. Walter attempts to put Elizabeth into the last lifeboat, but it is full and she is left behind. They both perish under the engulfing waves. Walter's charity and sacrifice on Elizabeth's behalf atoned for a multitude of sins. Phylos writes, "Was not the special crime of Salem atoned for, in that I brought Elizabeth to know God's law and karma, and in making my life a living sacrifice for her, and at the last dying in an effort to save her to happiness and enlightenment? Was that score not requited, fulfilled, and Jesus the Christ obeyed? Karma, self-made fate, binds the soul to make reparation in some life or lives for its sins in other lives. It bound me, I paid the debt, and yet I had not quite atoned for all the weary errors of past incarnations. This explains why, though he came to the end of his life, he did not make his ascension till 2 years ago. He wasn't required to re-embody, but he did have to balance enough karma to fulfill the requirements of the ascension. So we learn about these past incarnations of Phylos before he was Zalem in Book 3 of A Dweller on Two Planets. On the continent of Lemuria, Phylos was a cruel barbarian master. His mother, a priestess, ordered him to kill a young girl as a sacrifice to the gods. The girl, an embodiment of Pyrrhus, fainted from horror and was bound on an altar. He raised a knife over her body, but plunged it into his own heart. Instead of shedding her blood, he offered his own as a sacrifice. This, of course, was good karma. In another embodiment, Phylos was an ill-fed, ill-treated slave who died hungry. His next incarnation was a man of wealth who was always hungry in the midst of plenitude and lazy when action was needed. He developed stomach cancer and sought comfort in religion, living as a hermit in the wilderness. Every effect has its cause, doesn't it? His next embodiment was that of Zalem Numenos on Atlantis, and then Walter Pearson in America. After his death, as Walter Pearson, Phylos goes with Molang and Pyrrhus to Venus. Here he faces his final trial of the crisis. In preparation for this ordeal, he spends weeks in the presence of God the Father. On the day of his trial, he goes into the wilderness, receives some final counsel from a being of light, and is left alone. This shows his trial in the wilderness. He faces 3 severe challenges and successfully meets them all. His triumph was complete. Phylos writes, "I knew that God the Father was entered in me to dwell forever, and that the perfection of evil had failed in its last, most subtle, horrible, and insidious attack. And now my karma I had blotted out, and in me was life everlasting." He then heard the voice of the eternal Spirit within him say, "Thy trial is over, I am well pleased. Carry thou my word unto all men, that all may come likewise unto me. Behold, look back over the mighty past, and when thou hast so done, look on earth, and see how there to effect the work of giving the people of earth thy life history." And so, obedient to the call of God, Phylos dictated A Dweller on Two Planets with the following promise. This promise is made to you and to me. "With each copy shall go my love and greater. Mine eye shall note each hungered seeker for the truth, and, be it in the palace or cottage, there too will I be, not figuratively, but my spirit." So we have his book, we have his spirit, we have his presence, and today we have him as an ascended master, not just an unascended adept. So that is the outline of the life of an ascended master who is not dictated through the messengers of this organization, Mark Prophet or myself, at any time previous to this evening.